Hi, everyone. This is Megan Bosley. Welcome to your Career 203 course for Augmentative and Alternative Communication Support and Implementation. Your first module is Intro to AAC, and I'm just going to be laying some background knowledge for you for this module. You will see probably some repeats in some of the media and activities that you'll be doing, but I just want to make sure I'm able to explain what some of these things mean throughout the course. So, augmentative and alternative communication is what AAC stands for. And before we begin, I just want to recognize that communication occurs all day, every day, in every aspect of our life. It greatly impacts on our quality of life, and it is fundamental in literacy development and for participation in education. And most importantly, it is a human right. So, what is AAC? The definition of AAC is augmentative, which means to supplement or add to existing abilities. Alternative means to use something in a different way. So basically, this means that people with severe speech and language difficulties rely on AAC to learn language, supplement existing speech, or replace speech that is not functional. So someone who is using AAC could be using it for their main mode of communication, or they could be using it to supplement. What does that mean to be a multimodal communicator? That means that rather than just focusing on one area, we consider all forms of communication. For example, your body posture, facial expressions, gestures, writing, pointing to pictures, speaking, or using a communication device. So I just want you to think about how many different modes of communication you'd use as a verbal communicator or in addition to your verbal communication every day. As I'm sitting here just talking, I'm using my hands, I'm using facial expressions, all those things. So a lot of times our AAC users don't just use one mode. They most likely are a multimodal communicator. When we teach someone to communicate, someone who's already struggling to communicate, we consider all of their modes of communication. And we utilize what's called a total communication approach, meaning we honor any attempt to communicate regardless of what mode they're using. So, as a speech pathologist, I might document that they're using gestures, facial expressions, they're pointing to things, pointing to pictures, all of the above, because all those things help make them a successful communicator. So there's different types of AAC. There's low tech, there's high tech, there's also mid tech I will talk about. Low tech versus high tech. So low tech is going to be pictures. You might see that in a form of picture exchange. It could be any pictures on paper. You might use it like what we call a topic board. So picture supports for like a vocabulary lesson. There might be some core words, which I'll talk about later. They might be in a book where people are exchanging them, or just pointing to a book and flipping through it. Low tech can also include your sign language, gestures, those kinds of things. And then the high tech are those high tech smart communication devices. There's quite a variety of those, so I will briefly touch on some of those types as we get further in the presentation. Some low-tech brands of communication or AAC supports you might have heard of. One of them is called PECS. I'd say our district used to use a lot of PECS books. That's the picture, it stands for Picture Exchange Communication System. And it's a plastic book with Velcro and all these different pictures. We'd use a system called Boardmaker, software that we would print these pictures off of and design them. We had a lot of students use those in the past before high-tech systems were really more prominent. Another system is called Pod. We've had a few Pod users This stands for Pragmatic Organization Dynamic Display. This is organized through pragmatic branches, and it is a flip book. So you might have seen some people use this maybe in other districts. We've used it a few times. Um, but those are just some name brands of some low tech systems. Mid tech would be kind of in between a low tech and high tech system in that these are devices that are battery operated. You can record your own voice um, and interchange. Some of these have different overlays that you could change and different levels to provide the student with some vocabulary, but you're able to still give them that voice output, which is really sometimes that's really powerful, and that's what's motivating for them. This one here, this red button is an example of a switch. So you can record different messages on there, and the student would just press it. Sometimes we can attach icons underneath that plate, which is helpful as well. So when you get to high-tech systems, they're separated out by what's called dedicated and non-dedicated devices. And I just felt like this is just some important background information because I feel like a lot of you might have some questions about this. As to like why one student might have this device versus another one. Dedicated are some individuals who use a high-tech AAC might use a dedicated device because this device is only used for communication. So that means it's typically locked out from any other application. And more specifically, the dedicated devices are able to be funded by insurance. And they are typically sold from very specific vendors. So if a parent is going through early intervention, maybe, or has a private speech therapist, that private speech therapist might help them get a device funded through insurance. And that's important to know because a lot of these dedicated devices, they can range from $5,000 to $20,000. Obviously, that depends on what features the system needs. If it needs like eye gaze and a lot of other high tech stuff, then it's going to be very pricey. But some of the lower ones still range about 5,000. And I'll talk about what some of those look like. Non-dedicated are individuals who use high tech AAC, but they might use it for both communication and other purposes. So access to email, internet, some other apps. Some of these can be funded, but it's much more difficult to get authorization. An example of a non-dedicated device would be an iPad with a communication app, and there are a ton of communication apps. Oftentimes, a lot of these high-tech vendors or companies that make the dedicated devices, they also make some sort of companion app for the iPad. So some of these dedicated devices would be, this is one of our main brands that we have used a lot is PRC Saltillo. They used to be two different companies, and now they have merged into one. Saltillo produced the NovaChat, and they have a word power vocabulary that we typically use. And then PRC produces a what's called the Accent, and they use a Unity vocabulary system that you can only get on their dedicated devices. So that might be why you might see some student has one of these systems. It's not important to know, like for this course, you don't need to know which the name of the vocabularies and everything specifically, but that might be why you would see some of these students having one or the other. And that's because their team has done a lot of feature matching for that specific student's communication needs. Another company is called Tobii Dynavox. They make the I series. So they have a variety of different devices, and they have their own app on it called TD Snap. You can get a few other apps on there as well. They are the leader in eye gaze as well. So we've used a lot of their systems or just their app. Some other brands Vendors are Smartbox with Forbes AAC, Cough Drop, Talk to Me Technologies. There's quite a few, but these are just examples. If you wanted to take your time to look at their websites, it's very interesting. The non-dedicated um, systems are typically apps on an iPad. So PRC Sautillo makes Touch Chat and LAMP, Words for Life. LAMP stands for Language Acquisition Motor Planning. Um, Touch Chat is the most prominent AAC app that we use in our district. Tovi Dynavox makes TD Snap. So we've got a lot of TD Snap users too. And then Prolo Quota Go is another app you might hear of. Speak for Yourself, Cough Drop, or Grid. So the most common high-tech systems found in our district would be the NovaChat by PRC. We've had a few of the accents by PRC as well. I'm sorry, PRC Sautillo. And then TouchChat HD AAC with word power for iPad is the most common AAC app you will see in our district for a variety of reasons. One of those is that it is very user friendly, and because as you will learn, a lot of the users are actually staff, and a student is more likely to learn if staff and adults in their environment are touching the system. The student will essentially learn whatever you are touching. So that is one of the reasons why that one is the most preferred AAC app. PRC Sautillo also makes a software called Chat Editor. Our district uses this software. It is a free download, and throughout the course, you will get an experience using this. But it is just their supplemental software to help caregivers and therapists, educators support their users. And that is it so far. As you go through the module, you will see a variety of assignments and maybe a little bit of a repeat of kind of what I described to you. But you will also get to listen to some really cool videos about debunking AAC myths as well. So enjoy.